Welcome to the Dream 100 Show, the epicenter of influence, collaboration, and exponential growth. You're about to discover the power of relationships. Dream 100 relationships. And you're one relationship away from a totally different business and life. This is your host, Michael Tasner.
Hey there, and welcome to this week's episode of the Dream 100 Show. I have a wonderful guest for all of you today, Todd Bryan of Signature Wealth Partners, and we're going to have a conversation and kind of talk about how relationships and the power of one particular relationship has completely changed the trajectory of all the cool things that Todd has started moving towards. So Todd, it's my absolute pleasure to have you on our show today.
Yeah, thank you, Michael. It's my pleasure to be a guest of yours.
I want to start way back at the beginning, and you've shared a lot of really fun and interesting stories from your childhood and going to college and some of the mentors. Kind of take me back to let's go back to the college days. And I know that is really where we're going to hone in on this whole power of relationships and then how that relationship helped get you to where you are today. But take me back and just kind of talk a little bit more about your journey in college and your mindset and all that good stuff.
Yeah, thanks, Michael. I'm from Florida originally. I've been in Florida most of my life, thankfully, for weather purposes. And attended the University of Central Florida here in Orlando. My family and I and my business, Signature Wealth Partners, is located here in the outskirts of Orlando. But yeah, going to UCF was a great opportunity for me. I was excited to a newer university. You know, at the time, over 20 years ago now, not too many people had heard of UCF before. And I liked the idea of being part of something that was new and up and coming, and we could kind of build our own traditions. And going back to high school, it was really ingrained on me early on just to start working and getting a number of different jobs. So throughout high school, I had a number of different part-time jobs, and that translated into college as well. I ended up finishing college with 6 different internships plus an externship, plus working part-time jobs and going to school and still having time to spend with my friends. So it was a pretty fun college experience. And I'm very fortunate that it really got ingrained in me very quickly to start getting internships and, trying to figure out what I wanted to do, because at that time I still didn't really know. And it was through those experiences and through one particular professor that really pushed me to try new things and to get out there that I'm very grateful for.
So when you talk about kind of being pushed into, hey, you should go get internships and jobs, what was the thought process or the logic kind of around that? Was it a money thing, or was it more an experience or relationships? Tell me a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I think it was more of an experience type thing. Looking back, some of those internships were not paid. Some of them were, I think, like $5.50 an hour, which is much different than what it is today. So there was quite a range of different things, but it was my sophomore year, and I really grasped that idea of having an internship. And I was like, wait a minute, they're going to give me an opportunity where I can experience firsthand, see if this is the type of thing that I like and the type of career I want to go with and the type of company I want to work with. And they might even pay me to do it. I just thought, wow, this is great. I got to, sign up. And I kind of became like an internship junkie. I was pretty much every semester from that point forward checking out different things. And fortunately, many of those internships ended up being in the financial world, which is what I do today as a certified financial planner practitioner. But I also had a passion for sports, and I majored in marketing and I minored in sports business management. And it was through the sports business management program that I was able to gain a lot of knowledge and be able to grow a relationship with that mentor, that professor that I mentioned. But at the same time, made me realize I kind of enjoy watching on the sidelines more than actually working the game and working on the inner side of sports.
So I know that our listeners, as you all are listening in, we often talk about leveraging the Dream 100 for business gain. And we're going to come full circle shortly around that. But if you think about the stuff that Todd is talking about, leveraging internships to start to kind of stack those wins, you start to build those relationships in your personal life, and that starts to stack. And you start to then have that compound. You start to have these relationships growing, the next relationship, the next relationship. And it's the exact framework that we're teaching on the business side can be applied to leveraging in your personal life. So if we go back to, tell me a little bit more about the professor, and this relationship is very, very interesting. And I know that you've attributed a lot of your success and career and kind of who you are as a person now to this particular relationship. Tell me about kind of how you struck up the relationship. What are some of the things you did to maintain it? And then kind of on the other side, what are some of the fruits of that relationship that you've been able to realize?
Yeah, definitely, Michael. I was, again, a major in marketing. At first, I really didn't know what I wanted to do. And I kind of gravitated towards business and kind of realized that a business degree could help me in multiple different areas. And then once I went to business, I then chose marketing because I kind of realized that every type of business needs to be able to market themselves and be able to communicate to the public and get their name out there and all of that. I realized then, with that passion for sports, at that time, UCF was just starting a sports business management minor. At the time, they already had a very successful graduate program for sports business management, but they just started the minor. So I said, well, this is a great way for me to be able to enhance my knowledge in this area. Maybe I wanted to become a general manager of a sports franchise, or I wanted to become a sports agent or something like that. So I ended up signing up for the minor. And I remember that first class, I had some sort of a conflict and I couldn't do it. So I ended up getting in, I think, the next semester. And at that time, because the minor was so new, they were struggling to find enough students to fill the classroom. And there was one professor in particular, Dr. Fritz Polite, who really spent a lot of time with me, taking me aside and kind of planning this out, figuring out how I can make the minor work. And he was phenomenal. At the time, I think I just turned 21, and there was one bar on campus, like an independent concept, but it's no longer there anymore, unfortunately. And I had a question for him. And he's like, Todd, are you 21? I said, yeah. He's like, let's go grab a beer and we'll talk about it. And that particular interaction was one of my favorite UCF memories because, no other professor or anything had said, like, let's grab a beer and talk about it. Of course, making sure I was 21 first, but he actually ended up transferring to another school. And the person that came in and replaced him was Dr. Keith Harrison. And I was really bummed about Dr. Polite and leaving the university. And he had become a great mentor of mine. So when the new person, Dr. Harrison, came in, again, we were struggling to fill the classroom with this minor program. And there was actually instances where they kept telling us, administration from the school, that they were going to have to disband the program. It wasn't going to work out. And at this point, I'd taken a lot of classes already. So we actually had to fight to actually keep that minor going. But through the course of all of that, and why I mentioned this to you, Michael, is that there was a lot of independent studies because they couldn't fill the classroom. So they would just make it an independent study. So it was either myself and Dr. Harrison one-on-one, or there was a lot of times in which it was myself and maybe 2 or 3 other people in the study together. So we had a ton of one-on-one time. And initially we were bummed that the actual class wasn't going on. But through the independent studies, that's where I was able to grow a much deeper relationship. And, at that time, UCF had probably 45,000 students. These days, they've got close to 70,000. So many students, it is tough to really get those relationships built, those one-on-one interactions. And through those independent studies, that's where I was able to spend that time with Dr. Harrison. And as much as he taught us about sports and the business of sports, a lot of those conversations were just on life. What should your priorities be? And, if you're going to be conducting yourself in business, how should you be networking and how should you go about, growing relationships? And I attribute about all the networking that I earned early on to things that he taught me.
Is there anything then that you did personally to continue to kind of maintain and kind of keep that relationship warm so that you could kind of stay in the inner circle with that professor?
Yeah, I'd say probably my last graduated in now December 2007. So probably 2008, if not 2009, there was some opportunities to come back. They would have a panel of students that would come back to the class. And most of those panels, there'd be maybe 6 or 7 of us on the panel, and everybody had taken a job in sports because you're talking to the sports business management class. And I'd always be the last guy who started in financial planning and, wasn't in sports at all. And it was interesting to kind of have my perception on it, because they would say, well, Todd didn't go into sports, but here's what Todd learned from this program and from Dr. Harrison in particular and some of the other professors that are part of it. So they asked me to have the opportunity to come back as a panelist. And then over time that morphed into speaking at some of the classes. And it really encouraged me, through his encouragement as well, to stay involved with UCF College of Business and also with the UCF alumni as a whole.
So as our listeners just heard, so Todd had to take the initiative. He had to kind of seek out these relationships. And the same thing with the Dream 100 is that they're not just going to magically fall into your lap. So he was going on internships and kind of building relationships there and seeking out professors to see what information he could start to glean and then find ways thereafter to continue to give back. So hopefully, as you're listening to this interview, you're starting to grab a couple of insights of, are there some specific relationships in your personal life that you can just kind of continue to nudge a little bit and even reignite those relationships, because you never know where they're going to end up kind of pushing you, guiding you, etc. So if we fast forward to today, you're in the financial planning space, and obviously that business as a whole is relationship driven. And there's, all the things that advisors, certain terminology like find your centers of influence and different things like that. But as we look at this framework around Dream 100 of kind of finding, and I could, I guess, associate center of influence with the Dream 100, are there certain ways that you've kind of went about that to start to kind of grow your practice? Tell me a little bit more about that.
Yeah, you talk with a lot of advisors, and there's different ways in which they get started. And a lot of times they have an opportunity. I know numerous people who they're in the business because their father or another family member or somebody kind of got them in, and that was a good way for them to get started. Other people, they might start at a bank as a financial advisor, and you literally have leads walking in the doors. Not saying it's easy. It's never easy. But for me, there was not any leads walking in the door. I was not handed a book of business. I had to work extremely hard for everything that I built over now the past 17 years. And what we did, and this was before I was even aware of the Dream 100 concept, was essentially it was kind of take out a piece of paper. And, we kind of start with us in the middle, and then we just kind of think about all the different ways in which people are connected to us and the different people that we can, get started with and call on. One of my very first clients actually was a business owner that I had met here locally at an Orlando Magic game. And I got picked to do a promotion, so I got to go down on the court and participate in this, crazy game that I ended up not winning. So after that, I sat back down and he tapped me on the shoulder, and he owned a restaurant. So he said, "Hey, don't worry about that restaurant gift card. Come to my restaurant. I got you covered." So it was, he had like a free dinner or something that he wrote on the back of his business card. So I kept that business card. And a couple of years later, as I got into my career, he was one of the people I called, and I just said, "Hey, yeah, we randomly met at a Magic game 2 or 3 years ago. This is what I'm doing. I'd love to set up a meeting with you." And he was very reluctant at first, but I was able to get in there with him, and eventually he became a client. And so, I really worked very hard early on just identifying, who are those centers of influence? How can we kind of get started? And it was insanely difficult because I was 23. I looked like I was 13, and it was 2008 was my first full year in the business. So you can only imagine how that was going for me. But those relationships and kind of getting that together, that was really the key of trying to start to build that.
So playing devil's advocate a little bit with you, I know that insurance and the financial industry, and there's a lot of industries that are like, I'm not comparing it to network marketing, but I way back when I did a bunch of consulting and network marketing, and it was always take out a sheet of paper and write down everyone that you know. Do you think that if you would have, let's say, paused that strategy and maybe at the time, that's what you had to do with your age and just getting started. But what if you were to have paused that and, okay, great. So we've got these relationships here, but instead you were to say, here are the people that I want to start connecting with. Here are the people that I want as my clients that I want to help manage their money. And let's say it's business owners. Do you think that it would have potentially escalated your success if you made a list of the Dream 100 people that have lots and lots of restaurant owners on their mailing list in Orlando, for example, and started to build those relationships versus kind of the one-to-one of, I mean, reaching out to Aunt Sally and this college friend and that person? Would love your thoughts there.
Yeah, well, I started as an intern, and then I was an intern for about 7 months, and then I graduated and went full time. And I was actually pretty successful as an intern. But then when I went into full time, I pretty much had gone through all the Aunt Sally's of the world. And
Got
that's when, that's when I had to pivot, because I was like, okay, that was great at first. And all those people like me, but they need me to prove myself. They know that there's a high risk of me not making it in the career. I mean, I don't know the current numbers, but the stats we always used to look at was about 90% wouldn't make it 5 years in the business. So I think having something similar to the Dream 100. And, I remember I would look at like the Orlando Business Journal of all of the lists of the most successful top CEOs and different things like that. And those were the things that I would aspire not only to become myself, but also to try to, work with those types of clientele and work with them. So yeah, I think over the course of those first couple of years before I was able to build a nice foundation where then I could start getting referrals from clients, there was a lot of utilizing those types of things. So I highly agree with you as far as having those types of lists like Dream 100 list to be able to utilize to really try to grow your business quicker.
Do you do anything with your current clients or prospects by way of like gifting strategies or anything like that?
You mean as far as giving them gifts, or as far as helping them to, from a financial standpoint, like setting up a donor advised fund?
Sorry, I should have been more specific. Sorry. So like let's say they come in, they take a meeting with you, they have their initial meeting. Do you have like the marketing lingo I use is shock and awe kit, where they're kind of getting a bunch of goodies and things like that, like a physical gift handed to them, or maybe clients that are hitting certain milestones with you, you put them like a gift basket in the mail or something like that. I was just curious if you use any kind of physical gifting strategy with prospects or current clients.
Gotcha. Yeah. I think there's a lot of people that do a great job on these. And over the years, I think we've done pretty good. You can always get better. One of the strategies that I have used, which has worked pretty well, I'm fortunate that my office here is in a great location where there's a brewery next door. There's a market as part of that. There's several different restaurants within walking distance. And because people love this area so much, it's called Winter Garden, 25 minutes west of downtown Orlando. Because people love it so much, clients will come to me, and then a lot of times they'll go out to dinner afterwards, and I'll let them, they can use my parking spot and stay here. And especially for those newer relationships where things are kind of going pretty well, and I think it could really turn into a great client experience. There's been many times where they'll tell me that they're going to go to so and such restaurant afterwards, and I'll just call ahead to the restaurant and give them my credit card number, and maybe buy them a round of drinks or buy them dinner or something like that. And I've had a lot of success with those. As far as milestones, we work with a lot of clients that are hitting retirement, or maybe they're selling their business, and we'll try to do really nice customized gift baskets, not just like salt and crackers and wine and those types
Sure.
of cheese, but custom type things that is specific to the things that they like, to be able to give them. A client of mine who's was a big Georgia Bulldogs fan. Like when he retired, we did a customized Georgia Bulldogs basket for him. And, as a UCF fan, it pains me to support other colleges, but I got to do it for the sake of business sometimes. So we try to customize those types of things. And one thing we've been doing for a long time, which this was my wife's idea, so I give her credit. When my daughter was born, we received this customized book that has, kind of her name in it, and it's very nice, high quality. And my wife was like, you should start doing this for your clients. So, a lot of the clientele that I work with are like 55 and older. So for a lot of them, it's grandchildren. So when they have a grandchildren born, then we will send them the customized book with the grandchild's name. And you can customize like the way the child looks in the book, like what color hair they have, boy or girl, their nationality. And clients really love those.
I love that. I absolutely love the custom gift basket for the team that they liked, and hopefully you all are paying attention to the custom. Todd mentioned custom several times. So as you know, as I've taught the gifting strategy, while there's a lot of great places like gourmet gift baskets, and you can put these gift baskets in the mail, the whole point of building, growing, nurturing relationships is to demonstrate that you know more about these people than other people do. So you want to leverage that knowledge so that when you're gifting, it really hits home. So love those examples. Two more real quick questions for you. So first, I always love to know a favorite book, and you shared before we turned on the recording an interesting book. So tell me about one of your favorite books.
Yeah, and again, I've been fortunate. I got through with very great mentors over my life that say, hey, read this book, and I'll read it. So I think I've read a lot of great business books. What really came to mind, and part of our discussion, Michael, because we're talking about my mentor, my professor, Dr. Harrison. And yeah, a couple of years ago, I remember we had lunch, and we get together pretty frequently, at least a couple times a year. And he said, Todd, I'm so proud of you. You're having so much success in your business. You're already doing a lot to give back to the university. But, now that you're so successful, maybe we should start giving back specifically to my program. So I was like, oh, yeah, you're right. I think it's about that time. And what we do on an annual basis now is I donate books to his class. And he's like, I'm not talking about textbooks, and I'm not just talking about your standard business books. These are actually, what I like to do is give them children's books. And they're the type of books that are going to have a lasting impression, and they're going to be different than any of the other books they're going to receive during college or their professional careers. And what I personally enjoyed about it is I've got a 7-year-old daughter and a 5-year-old son. So when I will donate the books for Dr. Harrison's class, then he'll also send me a copy of one of the books to give to my kids. And now I've got 4 or 5 of these books over the past few years that I enjoy reading to my kids. And one of them is called What to Do with an Idea. And I never had seen this as a child and never heard of it before. There are a couple other books along the lines of this, but essentially the concept of it is it's a little child who has this idea. And in the book, the idea is actually given a form and a figure, and it basically looks like an egg. And throughout the book, people are kind of laughing at the idea, and they're like, what are you doing walking around with this idea? Like, what's this all about? And it just talks about how the child, keeps getting past all of those rejections and really realizes that idea that they have is unique and it's something special, and they really need to take care of that idea. And then by the end of the book, I don't want to spoil it for your listeners and your viewers, but the idea blossoms into something so big that it can not only change that individual kid's world, but change everybody's world around it. And as I was reading that book to my daughter just the other week, I used kind of iPhones as an example. Like, I said, when I was a kid, there was a phone on the wall, and you would talk to the phone on the wall, you put it back there. And somebody had an idea that, well, maybe everyone should have a phone in their pocket. And then they realized maybe everyone should just have a computer in their pocket. And I kind of use that as a concept for them as far as, what they should be doing with the ideas that they have.
Love it. My favorite question, and I always like to save this one for last, and I already know your answer based on things that you've shared in your style and what you hold important to yourself and your family. But when I look at legacy, and this is something that I personally am starting to really start to think a lot about, and I'm sure it's something you think a lot about, especially with the types of people and clients that you're dealing with. How do you want this world to remember you? What do you want your legacy to look like?
Yeah, I had a great experience throughout all those internships we mentioned at the beginning of the show, where I was able to interview professionals from a lot of these different companies to be able to establish and look at what successful people were doing. And it was a requirement of the first financial firm where I started my career to go out to 10 highly successful people. And we basically had an interview of a set of questions to ask them. So I was able to get in through the sports connections. I did my interview with the owner of a local sports franchise. And one of the questions was, who are the 3 most successful people that you know? And what one thing do they all have in common? So I'd asked that question 9 other times, and the answer was always, the hard work or dedication or perseverance or something like that. What the owner of this sports franchise told me, he said, all 3 of those people, what they've got in common is they're all absolutely miserable. And one of them is a very famous billionaire that a lot of people know. And his example was that nothing is ever good enough. They always have to they're striving to be better, which is a good thing, but they're doing it at the direct detriment of the relationships that they have and the families. And he said, they're just always continue to be miserable. And that stuck with me because I wanted to have a lot of success throughout my career. And I love helping people. And I'm proud of the businesses that we've built. But at the same time, if my kids don't look at me as a good dad to them, and I'm not taking care of them properly, then to me, the rest of it it doesn't really matter. So I think first and foremost, it's taking care of, family and God as well. But outside of that, wanted to be remembered as somebody who could really make an impact on people's lives. For most people, that could be from a financial standpoint. I've realized also through my business that I can't take on everybody. We do have certain client minimums for people to work with us. It's not like the early days where I would, literally take on anybody that would walk in the door. But since I can't take on anybody, then I do enjoy doing things like public speaking and podcasts where I can have an opportunity to make that broader impact on people and, really just continue to make positive impacts, not only on people's lives, but hopefully on their finances as well. And just try to teach them ways in which they can do things better, because there is a lot of bad information out there. And I think it's important for the really good financial planners to be able to spread that word out there and help people making smarter financial decisions. So again, I'd say it starts with my family first, but then outside of that, to be able to help my clients and then the broader public as well.
Love it. Where can our listeners go to learn more about you?
Our company's website is yoursignaturewealth.com. You can read my bio on there. I'm very active on LinkedIn, so linkedin.com/Todd A. Bryant, and then also Twitter and some of those other things as well. But feel free to hit me up on LinkedIn. I'd love to connect with you on there.
Perfect. Todd, I'm very, very grateful for the interview. Lots of really great nuggets. I love the idea around the sports team gifting, but the one that hits home for me the most is a non-Dream 100 concept, and that is making sure that you're being a great dad and wanting to be remembered as a great father. And I can remember a quote that one of my mentors had said 10, 15 years ago. He goes, with great success comes great sacrifice. And the level of success, similar to what you had mentioned and those other people you interviewed, this gentleman was a billionaire. And I made a decision literally right after that discussion that I wasn't going to compromise things with being a father and dad and husband to just simply attain success. So grateful for the interview. Make sure you guys go and check out yoursignaturewealth.com. Have a wonderful rest of your day and keep enjoying that beautiful Florida weather.
Yeah, thank you, Michael. Appreciate it. Great podcast. And I look forward to listening to this and all the other episodes as well.
Perfect. Michael Tasner signing off. Good morning, good afternoon, and good night.